Before we dive in, I've got a quick question for you. Where are you watching from right now, and what time is it? Drop it in the comments. I love seeing how far and wide our viewers are tuning in. Now imagine this: Jin-Woo, the Relentless, suddenly enters the Claymore universe. What happens next? Let's find out. There is no gate, no system notification, no blue window explaining what just happened. One moment, Jin-Woo stands as the Shadow Monarch in a world that finally learned to fear him. And the next, he is alone beneath a gray sky that feels wrong. The air is thinner, older, heavy with something unfamiliar. Not mana, not magic. Something raw and predatory. The land stretches in muted browns and dying greens, broken villages scattered like forgotten ruins. No skyscrapers, no hunters, no association. Just silence that feels like it is waiting to feed. A scream tears through that silence. Jin-Woo does not flinch. His eyes shift toward the sound with the calm of someone who has heard every kind of terror before. The scream cuts short, wet, suddenly, final. He moves without hesitation, coat swaying behind him as he crosses the field in a blur that crushes brittle grass underfoot. As he approaches the village, he slows. The scent hits him first. Blood, not fresh battlefield blood charged with mana. This is different, thicker, fouler, laced with something twisted. A man stumbles into the open street. His face is stretched in horror, mouth trembling, hands slick with red. He locks eyes with Jin-Woo and runs toward him, pleading for help. Jin-Woo watches carefully. The heartbeat is wrong, too fast, too strong. The scent from his body does not match the fear on his face. Behind the man, a child's body lies torn near a doorway. The transformation happens mid-stride. The man's skin splits, jaw unhinges, eyes distort into something inhuman. Muscles balloon grotesquely as claws burst from fingers that moments ago begged for mercy. The villagers hiding behind cracked shutters begin screaming again. Jin-Woo does not look surprised. He has seen monsters wear human shapes before. But this is cleaner, more intimate. The creature was not summoned. It lives here. The Yoma lunges. It moves faster than a normal human eye could follow, claws aiming straight for Jin-Woo's throat. The impact never comes. The street trembles as a black-armored knight intercepts the strike with a blade that hums with shadow. Sparks explode across cobblestone. Igris has already stepped forward. The Yoma recoils, confused. Its senses are sharp, but what stands before it does not breathe, does not bleed, do not fear. Jin-Woo steps past Igris slowly, gaze fixed on the creature's distorted face. So this is the energy of this world. He can feel it now, that foul pressure radiating from the monster's core. Not mana, not demonic magic, something parasitic, something that infects and consumes from within. And yet beneath it all lies power, untapped, claimable. The Yoma screeches and leaps again, this time twisting mid-air to avoid Igris and aiming for Jin-Woo directly, sensing the true threat. Jin-Woo shifts one step to the side, effortless. His hand rises and grips the creature by the skull before it can react. The ground shatters beneath their feet as he slams it down with controlled force. The entire street fractures. The Yoma thrashes violently, claws tearing through stone, trying to rake his arm. Jin-Woo's expression does not change. His shadow spreads subtly beneath him. Thin tendrils creeping outward like ink soaking into paper. Villagers peer from hiding as darkness begins to swallow the street itself. The creature lets out a sound that is half rage and half terror. Because for the first time since it began feeding in this village, it feels hunted. The Yoma's claws drag across Jin-Woo's sleeve and fail to pierce it. Its strength is monstrous by human standards, easily capable of tearing apart armored soldiers, but against the Shadow Monarch it feels incomplete, like a predator born in a shallow pond suddenly thrown into the ocean. Jin-Woo studies it even as it struggles beneath his grip. Its muscles pulse with that same foreign energy, a parasite embedded deep within its flesh, driving instinct, hunger, deception. This world does not rely on gates to create monsters. It breeds them from within humanity itself. Interesting. With a single motion, he twists. Bone snaps. Yoma's body goes limp. The village falls silent except for the crackle of a distant fire spreading along a wooden roof the creature damaged earlier. Smoke coils into the gray sky. Jin-Woo releases the corpse and lets it collapse into rubble. A notification window does not appear. No experience points. No system voice acknowledging the kill. For the first time in years, there is no structure guiding the outcome. He feels it immediately. Freedom. And something else. The corpse twitches. Jin-Woo's eyes narrow as dark veins ripple across the dead Yoma's skin. The parasite inside it writhes even in death, refusing to fade quietly. That energy is not dispersing into the air. It is condensing, trying to return somewhere, to someone. So there is a network. Without hesitation, Jin-Woo extends his senses and sinks them into the shadow pooling beneath the corpse. His power seeps inward, brushing against the parasite's core. The sensation is invasive, like pushing through layers of corruption and instinct. The parasite reacts violently, flaring in resistance, but it lacks will. It is driven by design, not consciousness. Jin-Woo presses harder. Black tendrils pierce through the corpse and wrap around the source of that yoki. The villagers gasp as the body lifts slightly off the ground, suspended by darkness. The energy pulses once, twice, then shatters like fragile glass under overwhelming pressure. The parasite is ripped free. For a brief second, it manifests as a writhing mass of distorted flesh and aura, shrieking without sound. Jin-Woo closes his fist. It compresses into nothing. The silence afterward is heavier than before. He does not attempt to extract a shadow from the Yoma, not yet. This world's rules are unclear, and reckless expansion is inefficient. Instead, he observes the lingering residue of energy spreading faintly outward from where the parasite had tried to connect. It travels underground, subtle but traceable. Somewhere beyond this village, something felt that interruption. The ground trembles again, but this time it is not from his power. A presence approaches at terrifying speed, slicing through trees beyond the hill. Jin-Woo turns his head slightly, eyes shifting toward the forest line. A silver flash bursts into view. A woman lands at the edge of the ruined street, blade drawn, boots skidding against stone as she stabilizes her stance. Her eyes are sharp, unnatural, pupils thin and predatory. Power radiates from her, not identical to the Yoma's corruption, but undeniably connected to it. Half human, half monster, controlled, barely. Clare has arrived. Her gaze locks onto the corpse, then the spreading darkness at Jin-Woo's feet, then Igris standing motionless like a silent executioner. She inhales once, sharply. She can sense it. The massive surge of energy that crushed the Yoma. The alien presence that does not belong to this land. To her senses, Jin-Woo feels worse than an awakened being. He feels like an abyss. The villagers begin shouting her title in desperate relief. Claymore, Savior, Monster Hunter. Clare does not acknowledge them. Her sword remains aimed at Jin-Woo, tip unwavering. "You are not human," she says, voice cold but steady. Jin-Woo meets her stare without hostility but without apology. The air between them thickens as two different systems of power silently measure one another. Shadows ripple behind him. Clare's yoki begins to rise instinctively in response. This world just noticed him, and it sent one of its weapons. Clare does not wait for an explanation. The moment her yoki spikes, the pressure in the street shifts violently. Dust lifts from the ground in spirals around her boots as the silver claymore in her hand hums with restrained force. To the villagers watching from shattered doorways, she is their last line of defense. To Jin-Woo, she is data. He senses it clearly now. The energy inside her is similar to the parasite he crushed, but refined, fused into her bloodstream rather than overtaking it completely. Controlled infection. Weaponized corruption. This world does not eliminate monsters. It implants them into warriors and calls it balance. Clare vanishes from sight. The cobblestones explode where she stood as she crosses the distance in an instant, blade descending toward Jin-Woo's neck with lethal precision. Igris intercepts again, greatsword clashing against Claymore in a shockwave that fractures nearby walls. The impact sends a ripple of force through the entire village square. Clare's eyes widen slightly. Her strike should have cleaved through steel. Instead, she meets a knight forged from darkness that does not yield. Jin-Woo does not move from his position. He studies her footwork, the tightening of her muscles before each strike, the calculated release of Yoki with every acceleration. She pivots mid-air, twisting around Igris with inhuman agility and redirecting her blade toward Jin-Woo's torso. The edge meets empty space. He is already behind her. A whisper of displaced air brushes her neck. Instinct saves her as she ducks and spins, blade sweeping in a wide arc that carves through a wooden structure behind him. The building collapses in splinters. The villagers scatter in panic. Clare lands, breathing controlled but heavier now. She increases her Yoki output. Veins darken faintly along her face as power surges through her limbs. The ground beneath her feet cracks again. She is escalating. Jin-Woo tilts his head slightly. He steps forward. Not fast, not flashy. Just enough to enter her range deliberately. Clare lunges to meet him, blade thrusting straight for his heart. Jin-Woo raises one hand and catches the flat of the blade with 2 fingers. The metal trembles violently under the pressure of her strength. Clare pushes harder, muscles straining, Yoki flaring brighter around her like invisible fire. The sword does not move. For the first time, uncertainty flickers across her face. Jin-Woo shifts his grip and flicks the blade aside with effortless force. Clare is thrown backward, boots carving trenches through stone as she struggles to maintain balance. Before she can reset her stance, shadows surge from behind Jin-Woo, stretching across the battlefield like living extensions of his will. They do not attack. They encircle. Clare feels it immediately. The darkness is not simply the absence of light. It is presence, watching, calculating, ready to swallow. She releases more Yoki. Her aura spikes violently, wind blasting outward in a circular shockwave that tears debris into the air. Her eyes sharpen further, pupils narrowing as her body edges closer to its limit. She is drawing deeper from the monster within her. Jin-Woo senses the shift and his interest sharpens. So this is what happens when control slips. Clare's speed doubles. She becomes a silver blur, striking from multiple angles in rapid succession. Igris blocks 2 attacks. A third grazes his armor, sending sparks through the air. A fourth pierces straight through his shoulder plate, the blade emerging from shadowed steel. The villagers gasp. Igris does not cry out. He does not bleed. Black mist pours from the wound and seals it almost instantly. Clare's eyes widened again. Immortality. Jin-Woo appears directly in front of her mid-swing and places his palm against her chest. The impact is controlled but devastating. The force launches her across the square, crashing her through the remains of a stone wall. Rubble collapses around her. For a moment, everything is still. Then the rubble shifts. Clare rises slowly, dust falling from her shoulders. Blood trails from the corner of her mouth. The veins along her face darken further as more Yoki floods her system. Her presence becomes heavier, more unstable. The monster inside her responds to humiliation with hunger. The villagers begin to scream again, but this time their fear is directed at her. Jin-Woo watches carefully. She crosses the threshold completely. She will transform into something far worse than the Yoma he killed. An awakened being. A creature ruled by instinct, powerful but predictable. He steps forward again, shadows stretching wider across the ruined village. The gray sky above feels darker now, as if reacting to the collision of two unnatural forces. Clare vanishes once more, reappearing above him with a scream that is no longer fully human, blade descending with every ounce of yoki she can force through her veins. And this time Jin-Woo does not block. He lets the blade come down. The Claymore crashes down with enough force to split a fortress wall, and it passes straight through him. Clare lands hard with her blade buried deep into stone where Jin-Woo had been standing, her eyes widening as the figure she struck dissolves into drifting black smoke. Shadow substitution. Before she can fully process it, the real Sung Jin-Woo steps out from behind her close enough that she feels the cold density of his presence against her spine. Two fingers rest lightly at the back of her neck, and every muscle in her body locks, not from pain, but from overwhelming authority. The pressure does not crush her. It commands her, pressing down on her nervous system with silent dominance. Her yoki surges in reflex, spiking violently as the monster within her senses something far higher on the food chain. For a fraction of a second, Jin-Woo looks deeper and sees the truth clearly. The parasite fused along her spine, threaded through her organs, coiled around her heart like a leash. Unlike the wild Yoma he destroyed earlier, this one is engineered and restrained, shaped into a weapon through deliberate cruelty. Someone built this system. Someone turned infected girls into soldiers and called it order. His eyes darken with calculation rather than rage. Clare roars and forces her body to move through sheer willpower, twisting free and slashing at point-blank range. The blade grazes his coat and slices fabric, the first real contact she has made, and she commits to it instantly by flooding her veins with more yoki. Her teeth sharpen, the whites of her eyes thin, and her aura detonates outward in a violent pulse that fractures the remaining structures around them. The villagers who had not already fled scatter completely as the air itself trembles. Igris steps forward to intervene, but Jin-Woo lifts a hand and the night halts. He wants to see the boundary of this world's restraint. Clare vanishes again and reappears above him with a scream that barely sounds human, her blade descending with everything she has left. This time, Jin-Woo blocks with his bare forearm, and the collision sends a shockwave across the ruined square, flattening what still stands. She pushes harder, desperation fueling the monster clawing at her insides, the threshold of awakening only a breath away. Jin-Woo makes his decision. Shadows erupt upward and form a dome that swallows them both whole, erasing the sky, the fire, the village, leaving only black ground and endless night. Clare staggers in disorientation because this is no longer her battlefield. Each step Jin-Woo takes echoes with sovereign weight, and the pressure amplifies until her yoki flickers unevenly. She charges regardless, refusing to submit, but the instant her blade swings, shadows coil around her wrists and halt the strike inches from his face. They do not crush, they restrain with surgical precision. She struggles violently, yet the darkness tightens gradually, restricting circulation and dampening the parasite's surge. Jin-Woo steps forward and places his palm over her heart, not to destroy, but to listen. Through shadow, he isolates the parasite's pulse and feels it attempting to synchronize with something far beyond this battlefield. The distant network he sensed earlier intensifies in response, and far across the land, stronger yoki signatures react like predators lifting their heads. This clash has become a signal. Clare's scream weakens as her power stabilizes against her will. Jin-Woo does not remove the parasite. He overwhelms it, forcing it into temporary submission and dragging her back from irreversible transformation. Her eyes regain fragments of clarity as the shadows loosen enough for her to breathe. The dome dissolves instantly, and the ruined village returns under its gray sky. Smoke coils upward, and debris settles in uneasy silence. Clare drops to one knee with her sword embedded in stone to support her weight, alive and still human by the thinnest margin. Jin-Woo stands untouched except for torn fabric, looking down at her with measured assessment rather than triumph. She is not the origin of this corruption. She is a soldier bound to it. In the distance beneath earth and beyond hills, Multiple surges of Yoki rise in answer, older and vastly more powerful. The first Yoma was a ripple, and this confrontation was a flare. Now the world understands that something has entered its hierarchy that hunts the infected without permission and bends their curse to its will. Jin-Woo lifts his gaze toward the horizon where those distant pressures gather, and for the first time since arriving, he senses anticipation instead of curiosity. This land breeds monsters from humanity itself, and its strongest weapons are already moving toward him. The horizon does not stay quiet for long. The distant surges of Yoki that answered the flare of battle begin moving with direction, converging like blades drawn toward a single target. Clare remains on one knee, breathing hard, her silver eyes locked on the man who dismantled her limits without killing her. Around them the village lies in ruins, smoke drifting upward as if the land itself is exhaling after witnessing something it cannot categorize. Clare forces herself back to her feet. Her grip tightens around her claymore, knuckles pale but steady. She understands one thing clearly now. The man standing before her is not a Yoma, not an awakened being, not anything the organization trained her to eliminate. And that uncertainty makes him more dangerous than any monster she has faced. "You're not from here," her silence communicates through the intensity of her stare. Sung Jin-Woo does not deny it. His attention shifts briefly toward the distant forest where approaching presences ripple through the air like storm fronts. He can feel at least 3 distinct signatures closing in, each stronger than Clare was at her peak moments ago. Structured, controlled, experienced. This world is escalating its response. Clare senses them too. Reinforcements. She should feel relief. Instead, something unsettles her. If multiple high-ranking warriors arrive and attack blindly, they will die. She knows it with cold certainty after experiencing his domain firsthand. She moves first again, not out of hatred, but calculation. If she can gauge him further before the others arrive, she might prevent a massacre. Her Yoki rises, but this time she keeps it measured, compressed tightly within her muscles rather than exploding outward. She dashes forward low to the ground, blade sweeping in a horizontal arc aimed not at his neck, but at his shadow. The strike cleaves through darkness. For a split second, the shadow beneath Jin-Woo flickers. Clare's eyes sharpen. She felt resistance. Not an illusion, not empty space. Something real exists within that darkness. Jin-Woo's expression shifts slightly and almost approving. Instead of countering immediately, he allows her to press the attack. She pivots seamlessly, blade reversing direction and thrusting toward his abdomen. He leans back just enough for the steel to graze his coat again. The precision of her movements is surgical. Every step is optimized. No wasted motion. Igris steps in to intercept, but Jin-Woo gestures subtly and the knight halts once more. This is no longer a simple test of strength. This is an analysis of a combat system built entirely around controlled corruption. Clare accelerates further, pushing into a rhythm that blends human discipline with inhuman speed. She vanishes from direct sight, reappearing at oblique angles with each strike. Jin-Woo counters with minimal movement, fingers redirecting the flat of her blade, shoulders shifting just beyond lethal trajectories. To an outside observer, it would look like a dance, silver arcs carving the air while black fabric sways calmly at the center. Then Clare shifts strategy. Instead of aiming for him, she aims for Igris. Her blade pierces through the knight's torso with explosive force, Yoki detonating on impact. The shockwave sends fragments of shadow scattering outward like shattered glass. For the first time, the street is filled with a burst of black mist torn from a summoned soldier. Clare watches closely. If these entities regenerate infinitely, then she must target the summoner directly. If they rely on a connection, she must sever it. Jin-Woo feels the strike through the link. Not pain, but disruption. He tilts his head slightly as Igris reforms, armor knitting back together in silence. Interesting. This world's energy interacts with his shadows differently. There is friction. Resistance. Clare lunges again before the knight fully stabilizes, blade flashing toward Jin-Woo's throat with perfect timing. This time he catches the edge with his bare hand. The steel trembles violently between his fingers, Yoki surging through it like a current. The force pushes him half a step back across fractured stone. Half a step. Clare notices, and she presses harder. Clare drives forward with relentless precision, sensing the smallest shift in his footing as opportunity rather than victory. Her Yoki compresses further, veins surfacing faintly along her arms as she channels everything into controlled bursts instead of reckless output. She twists the blade in his grip, forcing the edge to grind against his palm with enough torque to shear iron. The cobblestones beneath them split under the pressure wave radiating from their locked positions. Jin-Woo's eyes narrow slightly, not in strain, but in recognition. She adapts quickly. Most opponents either fear his shadows or overcommit against them. Clare does neither. She studies and adjusts mid-exchange. He releases the blade abruptly. The sudden absence of resistance pulls her forward half a step, and that is all he needs. His knee drives into her midsection with measured force, not enough to shatter, but enough to displace air from her lungs. She absorbs it, skidding back while forcing her breathing to stabilize instantly. Pain registers, but does not control her. The parasite within her responds to stress by offering more power, and this time she accepts just a fraction more. Her aura sharpens. The silver of her eyes seems colder now, less human hesitation and more honed instinct. She launches again but alters her angle mid-dash, kicking off a crumbling wall to attack from above while simultaneously releasing a focused burst of Yoki downward. The compressed energy slams into the ground at Jin-Woo's feet and detonates upward in a vertical blast designed to limit mobility. Dust engulfs the street. Through the cloud, steel flashes repeatedly. Clare attacks blind, trusting her senses to track his presence through Yoki feedback alone. Each swing is decisive, aimed to maim rather than test. Sparks burst in rapid succession as her blade collided with something unseen inside the smoke. When the dust thins, Igris stands between them again, armor marked with shallow fractures that seal as quickly as they form. Clare does not hesitate. She pivots low and slices across the knight's legs, forcing him to kneel for a fraction of a second before driving her elbow toward Jin-Woo's ribs. The strike connects partially this time, enough to shift his torso and force him to redirect her momentum with a grip on her wrist. Their eyes lock at close range. She sees no arrogance there, no mockery, only calculation. He sees no fear in hers, only resolve. Clare twists her captured wrist violently, dislocating it intentionally to break his hold, then snapping it back into place with brutal efficiency. The movement is so fast it almost escapes normal perception. She spins and brings the Claymore down in a vertical arc that tears a fissure through the entire street. Jin-Woo vanishes again. The blade crashes into empty stone and splits it in two. Before she can reset, a shadow erupts beneath her feet and coils around her ankle, yanking her downward. She slams into the ground hard, but rolls through the impact, slicing the tendril apart mid-motion. She rises instantly, blade raised, scanning every angle. The surrounding darkness shifts unnaturally. Multiple silhouettes step forward from Jin-Woo's shadow, not fully formed soldiers, but partial manifestations. Humanoid outlines with glowing eyes. They circle her without sound. Clare inhales slowly, steadying her pulse. If she is overwhelmed from all sides, even her control will fracture. She makes a bold choice. Instead of defending, she charges directly toward Jin-Woo's true position at the center of the encirclement. She allows two shadow figures to slash across her back in passing. Shallow cuts that draw blood, but not hesitation. Pain sharpens her focus. She closes the distance and thrusts her blade straight for his heart again, pouring every ounce of compressed Yoki into a single piercing strike designed to punch through any defense. This time the impact forces a visible shift. The ground beneath Jin-Woo fractures deeper and his coat snaps violently in the shockwave. The blade stops just short of penetration, but the force behind it is undeniable. Clare feels it. He is not immovable. And that realization changes everything. Jin-Woo tilts his head slightly, acknowledging the surge of power Clare has summoned. Her strikes are no longer mere tests. They are calculations with lethal intent, each movement precise enough to exploit even the smallest weakness in his defenses. Yet he does not panic, does not overcommit. His shadows swirl subtly beneath his feet, a living extension of his awareness, expanding and contracting in perfect rhythm with her yoki bursts. Every blade she swings, every movement she makes, he observes, catalogs, and counters, without visible effort. The battlefield becomes a silent dialogue of intent and instinct, a conversation conducted in strikes, parries, and shadow pulses. Clare senses it too, the unnatural calm radiating from him, and for the first time feels the cold realization that she is facing a predator who does not fight for victory, but for observation and domination. The air thickens as she pivots, her claymore slicing in a series of arcs meant to overwhelm him from multiple angles. The shadows beneath Jin-Woo coil tighter in response, intercepting every swing without directly touching her, forcing her to redirect mid-motion with split-second timing. Each adjustment demands more of her yoki, more of the parasite within her, and her aura begins to flare uncontrollably in small bursts. Her teeth grit as she pushes further, muscles straining, veins darkening along her arms, but Jin-Woo remains eerily still, his calmness amplifying the pressure. He finally acts. With a subtle gesture, a shadow tendril shoots forward faster than the eye can track and wraps around the claymore mid-swing, not to break it, not to harm her, but to redirect its force downward. The strike carves a deep trench into the street behind him, throwing dust and rubble into the air and destabilizing Clare's footing just enough to make her pause. In that instant, Jin-Woo closes the distance, a single step carrying him across the shattered square in almost no time at all. Clare spins, yanking her blade upward in anticipation, but he is already above her, eyes meeting hers with a quiet, measured focus. She can feel the dominance in his presence, a weight that presses against her instincts and forces her heart rate to spike. Her training kicks in. She refuses to flinch, planting her feet, stabilizing her stance, and driving the claymore downward with all her strength. Jin-Woo leans slightly to the side, allowing her to overcommit just enough that the tip of her blade grazes his coat, slicing through fabric but meeting nothing else. His hand flicks subtly, redirecting the kinetic energy without appearing to move, and Clare feels her momentum halted mid-action. The parasite within her reacts instinctively, pushing more yoki into her muscles, her aura flaring violently as she struggles to regain control. He does not attack. He simply watches, reading every micro-expression, every slight shift of her energy. The street trembles beneath them as if acknowledging the clash of two forces beyond its comprehension. Clare knows that if she overextends again, if she lets the Yoma-derived power within her dominate fully, she could cross a threshold from which there is no return. But holding back is dangerous too. He is learning her limits, and the longer she hesitates, the more data he gathers. She decides to escalate. With a sudden motion, she vanishes from sight, using her compressed yoki to launch herself through the air in a blinding dash aimed directly at Jin-Woo's midsection. Shadows respond instantaneously, extending from his form to intercept her trajectory. The collision sends a shockwave across the broken village, hurling debris and dust in every direction. She rolls through the impact, barely maintaining balance, and spins to strike again from a different angle, hoping to catch him off guard. Jin-Woo remains composed. He shifts his shadows subtly, absorbing the impact of her strike, redirecting force and preventing injury. His expression does not change, but his eyes gleam with quiet interest. He can feel the strain in her body, the yoki surging in bursts as her control falters slightly with each attack. Her breathing remains controlled, but the effort shows in the tightening of her jaw, the slight twitch of her muscles under her skin. Clare pushes harder, her silver eyes sharp, aura flaring violently as she releases a concentrated burst of Yoki into the Claymore. The weapon becomes an extension of her will, a channel for her parasite's aggression. She swings again, a combination of thrusts and arcs designed to overwhelm him completely. Shadows coil and strike in response, intercepting her movements without breaking form. Each interaction fractures the ground, sending stones and dust spiraling into the air. The villagers hiding nearby would never understand the magnitude of this confrontation. The exchange of power and instinct at a level beyond human comprehension. Jin-Woo finally steps forward, closing the distance in a blink, and places a hand lightly against her chest. The force is not crushing, not aggressive, but impossible to resist. Her momentum halts mid-motion, Yoki flaring wildly in panic as her body struggles against the invisible pressure. The parasite inside her lashes out, desperate to regain control, but Jin-Woo's shadow has already enveloped it partially, dampening its output just enough to prevent her from overstepping. Her silver eyes widen as she realizes the full extent of the predator she faces. She is not fighting a human. She is facing a sovereign who can bend instinct and curse alike to his will. The village is silent except for the creak of splintering wood and the faint hum of residual Yoki energy in the air. Clare's breathing is controlled, her stance unwavering, but her aura is unstable now, flickering like a storm barely restrained. Jin-Woo steps back slightly, giving her room to recover, but his presence continues to dominate the square. He observes her every reaction, every surge of energy, every micro-expression of strain. Clare tightens her grip on the Claymore, her eyes narrowing. She knows she has not even scratched the surface of his power, yet retreat is not an option. She gathers herself, compressing Yoki tightly within her, preparing for the next strike. The shadows around Jin-Woo ripple in response, coiling like a living thing, waiting. She launches again, faster, sharper, every movement measured to test, to probe, to learn. Jin-Woo tilts his head slightly, a faint shadow smile forming. He has learned her limits. Now it is time to see what she will do when those limits are pushed beyond comprehension. Clare propels herself forward with unrelenting force, every movement precise, every strike calculated. Her Yoki pulses violently, veins darkening as the parasite within pushes her body past natural limits. Each swing of her Claymore carries lethal intent, slicing through the air with silver arcs that tear up the fractured street beneath them. Jin-Woo does not move backward, does not flinch. Instead, his shadows ripple subtly, adjusting like living instruments to intercept her attacks without appearing to touch her. Every impact is absorbed, redirected, or nullified before it can harm him, and yet he does not strike directly. He wants to observe. He wants to test. Clare senses it immediately. She is not facing a normal opponent. Every calculated thrust, every compressed burst of Yoki is met with calm, silent dominance. This man is not fighting for victory. He is rewriting the rules mid-battle. She twists, swinging from an oblique angle designed to bypass his defenses, but the shadows beneath Jin-Woo coil in perfect symmetry with her movements, intercepting the blade and redirecting its force downward. The street splits along the impact line, debris flying in all directions. Clare stumbles slightly, regaining footing, her breathing sharp but controlled. She can feel the strain, the subtle pressure of dominance pressing against her instincts. The parasite inside her surges instinctively, reacting to the force in ways her conscious mind cannot fully predict. Her silver eyes flash, pupils narrowing as she channels more Yoki into a concentrated thrust aimed directly at his torso. Jin-Woo leans into the strike just enough to let her overcommit. The Claymore passes close, scraping fabric but meeting no flesh, and the kinetic energy transfers partially into the shadows beneath him, coiling and tightening like a living net. Clare spins, recalibrates, and thrusts again, this time incorporating a series of rapid, piercing stabs designed to overwhelm his shadowed defense. Each strike impacts differently, some absorbed, some deflected, some grazing his coat. The force is immense, Yet Jin-Woo remains calm, his eyes locked on her every twitch, every breath, every surge of parasite energy. The air between them vibrates with tension, a silent storm of Yoki and shadow. Clare realizes that conventional strategies are useless here. The closer she pushes, the more the shadows adapt. The harder she releases Yoki, the more he seems to anticipate. It is no longer just a fight. It is a measurement of limits, a conversation of power conducted through bone, steel, and cursed energy. She pivots low, vaults off a broken wall, and descends with a vertical strike aimed to pierce the shadows themselves. Jin-Woo does not dodge. Instead, he places a single hand at chest height. The downward arc is stopped mid-motion, the blade shuddering under invisible pressure. Clare's muscles strain as she pushes against it, Yoki flaring uncontrollably, yet the shadows tighten subtly, just enough to control rather than destroy. She releases another burst of energy in desperation, silver aura flaring violently, and Jin-Woo steps closer. Each footfall shifts the battlefield imperceptibly, shadows spreading like tendrils to anchor her movements, compressing force, restricting space, bending her attacks into calculated deflection. Clare fights instinctively, twisting, leaping, slashing, forcing the parasite inside her to surge with every movement. Yet with each strike, Jin-Woo adapts, absorbing energy, redirecting it, and analyzing. The difference is staggering. This is no longer just physical combat. This is a war of systems. Her Yoki, her parasite, her training, all of it is being cataloged and countered in real time. The ground trembles violently as they clash again. A fissure runs through the village square, splintering wood and cracking stone. Dust and smoke swirl like a storm, limiting visibility. Clare moves through it with perfect awareness, relying entirely on instinct and Yoki feedback. She feints to one side and then thrusts upward with the tip of her blade, a calculated attempt to bypass his shadow defenses. Jin-Woo shifts slightly, allowing the blade to graze him while redirecting its kinetic force into the earth. The strike fractures the ground beneath, sending debris into the air, but leaves him entirely unscathed. Clare stumbles slightly, but recovers instantly, adjusting her stance, eyes narrowing. She knows she has tested his limits, and yet he has revealed none of his own. Every strike she delivers is met with calm, precise adaptation. There is no flinch, no hesitation, no sign of exertion. Her heart pounds, her Yoki burns, her aura flares, but the man before her is untouchable. The realization hits her. She is no longer fighting to defeat him. She is fighting to survive, to measure, to endure. Her breaths come in sharp, controlled bursts, every movement designed to probe weaknesses rather than to strike decisively. Jin-Woo finally acts. Shadows erupt from beneath him, wrapping around her legs and arms, not violently but with inescapable precision. She struggles, muscles burning, veins darkened with exertion, as the shadows tighten and restrict her movement. The parasite inside lashes out instinctively, surging with power, yet the shadows respond, absorbing and redirecting its energy with flawless accuracy. Clare swings her Claymore in desperation, cutting through tendrils, but more emerge instantly to intercept, anchoring her strikes, controlling her position. Her silver eyes widened. This is no longer an exchange. This is dominance. The pressure of his presence is absolute, bending instinct and curse alike to his will. Clare pushes again, Yoki flaring with every ounce of strength she can summon, but the shadows respond instantly, adjusting, countering, containing. She realizes fully now that she is facing someone who does not simply fight, someone who analyzes, adapts, and controls the battlefield in ways that go beyond her comprehension. Her breaths grow sharper, muscles screaming, yet she refuses to yield. This is her limit, her fight, and she will not back down. The village lies in ruins around them, smoke and dust swirling, debris scattered across fractured stone. The air vibrates with tension, charged with Yoki and shadow, every second a testament to the magnitude of the clash. Clare tightens her grip on the Claymore, aura flaring violently, and lunges forward again, faster, sharper, every strike measured to probe, to test, to survive. Jin-Woo's shadows coil and shift in perfect symmetry, intercepting and adapting in real time, observing, calculating, controlling. The battle is far from over, but one truth has become undeniable. Clare is powerful, but Jin-Woo is beyond the comprehension of this world, a predator who hunts instinct and curse alike. The next strike will not be simple. It will be the escalation that decides the boundary between human and sovereign. The battle between Clare and Jin-Woo sends tremors far beyond the ruined village. Deep within the mountains, in shadowed halls lined with stone and steel, the organization feels the disturbance almost instinctively. High-ranking Claymores pause mid-step, swords trembling slightly as a cold, alien energy pulses through the air, the kind of energy that carries no familiarity, no precedent. The elders convene instantly, their faces etched with concern that borders on fear. Reports of a monster unlike any they have encountered reach the council at staggering speed. Villages report Yoma behavior that defies prior patterns, strange shadows moving independently, and the sudden disappearance of entire bands of their fighters. This is not just a threat, this is an anomaly capable of rewriting their hierarchy. Orders are given. Top-ranked warriors are dispatched without hesitation, each one chosen for strength, experience, and the ability to control their own yoki at the highest levels. The mission is clear. Eliminate the intruder at all costs, regardless of the collateral damage. The organization has never faced an entity like this. Not a Yoma, not a rogue awakened being, not even the Abyssal ones that occasionally stir beyond their borders. This presence moves with intent, intelligence, and a mastery of combat that eclipses everything they have trained for. Even the strongest Claymores feel an unfamiliar weight in the air, a pull that warns them that they are entering territory where normal rules do not apply. Jin-Woo does not wait for them to arrive. He observes from the center of the ruined village, shadows stretching outward like a living network that senses each approaching step. The faint tremor of yoki signatures grows stronger, larger, and more structured. More than 10 elite Claymores appear on the ridge above the village, their silver blades catching the muted sunlight as they form a semicircle, ready to converge. Each carries the calm precision of a predator, eyes scanning, yoki flowing in measured bursts designed to react to the unexpected. They are confident, but that confidence carries the edge of uncertainty. They have never sensed energy quite like this before. It is raw, intelligent, and infinitely adaptable. Clare stands beside him, her own breathing heavy, aura still flaring from the previous exchanges. She does not trust him. She cannot. But she cannot deny what she witnessed. She saw his shadow strip away her full power, saw him bend her instincts without touching her. Now, watching the organization approach, she realizes that the true danger is not just the incoming warriors, but the cascade of events this intrusion has triggered. Jin-Woo senses it too. He tilts his head, focusing, reading the yoki flow from each Claymore as if it were a pulse in a single immense network. This is not merely a fight. It is a test of the world's hierarchy itself. The top-ranked Claymores begin their descent, moving in precise, synchronized steps designed to close the gap before he can react fully. One of them steps forward, a veteran whose yoki flares more violently than any other present, signaling authority and dominance. His voice carries across the ruined streets, cutting through the smoke. Jin-Woo's head tilts, expression neutral but eyes calculating. The shadows at his feet ripple and shift, growing longer, denser, a response that is subtle yet undeniably threatening. The veterans circle, cutting off escape routes and attempting to isolate him from Clare and the village remnants. Every step they take fractures the ground slightly, not just from weight, but from the release of concentrated yoki. He does not panic. He does not retreat. Instead, he observes, letting the Claymores make their initial moves. They coordinate flawlessly, attacking from multiple angles with lethal efficiency. One swings in a wide arc, aiming to force him into a defensive posture. Another moves to flank from behind, yoki condensed into their blade tips. Yet each movement he anticipates, his shadows responding in milliseconds, countering force without direct engagement. The environment itself becomes a tool in his hands as shadows coil around broken beams, lift rubble, and subtly restrict their approach. The Claymores, trained to kill monsters efficiently, find themselves confronting an opponent whose methods are entirely alien to their experience. The lead Claymore realizes immediately that brute force will fail. He signals the others, adjusting formation, combining attacks, compressing yoki output into concentrated bursts to try and overwhelm Jin-Woo. The ground quakes violently as energy clashes against energy. Dust and smoke swirl in chaotic patterns, and yet he remains calm. Stepping lightly over broken stones, shadows coiling and expanding to intercept each strike. A blade intended to pierce his chest instead is trapped mid-air by a tendril of living darkness, redirected harmlessly into the ground. Another swing aimed at his flank is countered subtly, force absorbed and dissipated through a network of shadows that seem almost intelligent. Jin-Woo begins to act decisively. His shadows surge forward not as blades, but as living extensions of his will, wrapping around each approaching Claymore without crushing, simply restricting and manipulating. He isolates their attacks, forcing them into collisions with each other, disrupting formations with minimal effort. Their coordinated advance begins to falter. Confusion flickers in their eyes, the first hint that their training is insufficient against this unpredictable predator. The eldest of the dispatched warriors, a figure whose yoki radiates like a second sun, recognizes the anomaly instantly. This is beyond mere combat prowess. The man has seen awakened beings, has faced the most dangerous Yoma and hybrid threats, and yet the energy emanating from Jin-Woo does not align with any known classification. Authority, adaptation, instinct, and domination, all layered into a single entity. Orders are shouted, adjustments made, but with every corrective maneuver, Jin-Woo reacts faster, smarter, and more lethally efficient. Shadows wrap around weapons, redirect momentum, and subtly influence the battlefield itself, bending terrain and positioning to his favor while keeping him physically untouched. Clare watches, tension coiling in her gut. She realizes that even her own interventions would be insufficient if he chose to oppose these top-ranked Claymores fully. The organization has responded, thinking it can contain this intrusion, but they have only provoked him. Jin-Woo tilts his head slightly, calculating. Each warrior, each surge of yoki, each precise formation is data now, cataloged, understood, and ready to be used against them. This is no longer a battle of skill or strength. It is a war of understanding versus instinct. And Jin-Woo has infinite patience. The Claymores exchange brief glances, the weight of their own mortality pressing on them. Every move they make is observed and countered in ways they cannot predict. Dust and stone rain around them as Jin-Woo shifts shadows beneath his feet, subtly controlling angles and momentum, isolating threats without appearing to lift a finger. He steps lightly across the fractured street, and for a moment, the silence of anticipation dominates. The lead Claymore feels the pressure, the unnatural calm that precedes disaster, and instinctively signals an all-out offensive. The other warriors surge forward simultaneously, blades flashing, yoki compressing into focused bursts meant to overwhelm. Jin-Woo lets them approach, shadows coiling and intertwining with their movements, redirecting, controlling, absorbing kinetic energy while keeping himself untouched. Every step, every swing, every surge of yoki is countered subtly, almost invisibly. The organization's elite forces, the pinnacle of human-monster hybrid training, feel the first true dread of facing an entity whose skill transcends their hierarchy. Clare realizes the truth fully now. Jin-Woo does not merely defeat monsters, he dismantles systems. He analyzes, adapts, and dominates in a way that leaves even the most disciplined warriors powerless to respond effectively. The battle is just beginning, yet the outcome is already being written in shadows. The organization has sent its best, but they are confronting an entirely new variable, one that does not play by their rules and will not yield to their strategies. The ground quakes violently again as Jin-Woo finally moves decisively. Shadows erupt outward, enveloping multiple claymores simultaneously, not to kill yet, but to control, to isolate, to demonstrate superiority. Panic flickers in the eyes of those who believe themselves untouchable. He steps forward, coat swaying, eyes cold and calculating. The organization has responded, but the predator they unleashed will not merely fight. He will dominate. Their hierarchy, their authority, their entire system is at risk of collapse under a single, silent evaluation. The elite warriors realize in that instant that the rules of engagement have changed. Survival is no longer measured by strength or skill alone. It is measured by understanding an opponent who does not belong in this world. And Jin-Woo stands at the center of it all, shadows alive at his command, patient, calculating, and fully aware of the inevitability he carries. The organization's response has only confirmed what he already knows. This universe underestimates him, and that is its first mistake. The elite claymores tighten their formation, silver blades catching the faint light that filters through the smoky sky. Each warrior radiates concentrated yoki, a collective pressure meant to intimidate, isolate, and crush their target. They speak little, relying on instinct honed through years of combat, trusting formations and signals more than words. Yet every step they take, every subtle adjustment, Jin-Woo anticipates. Shadows ripple beneath him, coiling like living armor, extending tendrils that subtly manipulate space around each approaching warrior. A single misstep would unbalance them all, and he knows it. His patience is infinite, his calculation flawless. This is not just a fight. This is a study of the strongest members of an organization designed to hunt monsters with precision and efficiency. Clare watches from a short distance, still wary, still unsure whether to intervene. The tension in the air is almost suffocating. The villagers, hidden behind rubble and broken walls, peer cautiously through gaps, sensing something far beyond their understanding. These claymores are their protectors, but even they appear vulnerable against the shifting shadows at Jin-Woo's command. She sees subtle hesitations, brief flickers of uncertainty in the faces of those who thought themselves unstoppable. Each claymore's yoki pulses aggressively, trying to assert dominance over the strange presence before them. Yet every surge meets no resistance, only subtle, invisible manipulation from Jin-Woo. The lead claymore steps forward, his silver eyes narrowing. His aura blazes brighter than the rest, yoki compressed into precise bursts meant to overwhelm. He calls out commands, initiating coordinated attacks designed to encircle Jin-Woo completely. They strike in perfect unison. Blades aim to meet simultaneously, surges of yoki intended to crush and pierce without mercy. The ground shatters beneath the force of their combined energy, creating fissures that snake through the village ruins. Dust and debris spiral violently into the air as the elite warriors converge. Jin-Woo tilts his head, expression neutral, watching them advance with interest rather than concern. Shadows leap forward, wrapping around blades mid-swing, redirecting energy without contact. Tendrils slide along fissures in the ground, anchoring positions and subtly altering angles, forcing the claymores to adjust mid-attack. Every strike they deliver, every precise movement, is catalogued and countered invisibly. Their synchronization falters as each attack is subtly manipulated, creating gaps, misalignments, and small mistakes that Jin-Woo observes without exertion. The more they push, the more data he gathers, the more he dominates the battlefield, without a single lethal strike. The claymores realize something unprecedented. This opponent does not fight like a monster or a warrior. He does not respond with raw force, nor with predictable strategy. He reads, adapts, and manipulates the battlefield itself. Even the most experienced warriors hesitate, unsure whether to continue the coordinated assault or retreat. The faintest crack in their formation becomes a potential opening, but Jin-Woo controls every inch of space with invisible authority. He steps forward lightly, shadows stretching to intercept without breaking form, forcing the elite warriors to adjust constantly, their yoki surging in bursts that achieve nothing. One Claymore attempts a flanking maneuver, sprinting across fractured terrain with yoki condensed to lethal precision. Another launches a high vertical slash, hoping to bypass the shadows controlling the lower plane. Yet each strike is intercepted subtly, redirected harmlessly, absorbed and dispersed without visible effort. The organization's finest warriors find themselves unable to touch him directly. Their coordination falters as each attack fails to achieve the intended effect. Panic, however slight, flickers in the eyes of even the most disciplined fighters. Clare senses the shift. Even she, trained to fight awakened beings, realizes that the top-ranked Claymores are no longer the dominant force here. She steps closer, yoki compressed but flowing, ready to intervene if Jin-Woo decides to escalate. The presence of the shadows, the sheer calm in his gaze, the absolute precision of his manipulation, it is undeniable. He is beyond the parameters of their understanding, a sovereign predator assessing them, cataloging every motion, every instinct, every surge of yoki for his own purpose. The lead Claymore shouts again, attempting to rally the formation. "Concentrate! Strike together!" Their attacks intensify, blades crossing simultaneously, yoki pulses sharpened like knives. The ground fractures violently, debris whirling and stones splintering under the force. Jin-Woo does not flinch. He leans slightly, shadows coiling around each approaching strike, bending trajectories, redirecting momentum, and controlling angles with minimal effort. What should have been overwhelming power is rendered ineffective, neutralized almost effortlessly. The elite warrior's confidence begins to waver. The subtle manipulation of shadows is not lethal, yet it is absolute. They are no longer in control. Every motion is cataloged, every attack redirected, every advantage removed. The organization's best are confronting an entity that reads them with the precision of a predator analyzing prey. Their yoki pulses with intensity, but their blades meet shadows instead of flesh. They are powerful, skilled, disciplined, yet completely outmatched by tactics that defy understanding. Clare watches closely, aura flaring, muscles tense, knowing she could intervene, and yet realizing that even her combined strength with Jin-Woo against them would not yield a conventional victory. This is a demonstration of supremacy, a warning of the predator who has entered their world. The organization believes it is responding with authority, with elite warriors, with strategy. But Jin-Woo is a force that ignores all hierarchy. Every pulse of his shadows teaches, restrains, and dominates simultaneously. The Claymores may survive the engagement, but the lesson is already etched into every fiber of their being. The battlefield trembles once more as Jin-Woo steps forward, shadows stretching outward in subtle ripples that anchor him in place while enveloping multiple attackers simultaneously. He does not strike directly. The motion is minimal. Yet every Claymore feels the oppressive weight of authority, the control over their movement and intent. The lead Claymore halts mid-step, yoki spiking instinctively as he senses that any further movement could be exploited. The others hesitate as well, uncertainty flickering where confidence once resided. Jin-Woo's eyes scan each of them, cataloging, calculating, and asserting dominance without a single lethal motion. The organization has responded in force, but the predator they unleashed is not merely surviving. He is controlling the battlefield, testing the boundaries of their power, and rewriting the rules of engagement in real time. The elite warriors exchange fleeting glances, comprehension dawning. They are not fighting a man. They are confronting an entity that observes, adapts, and manipulates instinct, energy, and terrain simultaneously. Their yoki pulses, compressed and sharpened, collide with shadows that bend and redirect almost imperceptibly. They realize, with a cold certainty, that survival alone will require every ounce of skill and instinct they possess. The organization's response has escalated the situation, but in doing so, it has only confirmed one undeniable truth. Jin-Woo is beyond conventional threat assessment, beyond hierarchy, and far beyond their understanding. The battle is far from over, but already the rules have changed. Jin-Woo's shadows pulse subtly, expanding outward like a living web across the fractured battlefield. Each tendril moves with precision, anchoring to debris, stone, and even the lingering energy of the claymores themselves. Every step they take, every swing of a blade, every flicker of yoki is noted, measured, and responded to instantaneously. He does not rush. He does not panic. He does not overcommit. The elite warriors, veterans of countless battles against Yoma and awakened beings, begin to feel something entirely unfamiliar. Their strategies, their instincts, even their raw power, are no longer sufficient to dictate the pace of combat. The predator they face controls the rhythm entirely. The lead Claymore signals a coordinated charge, their intention to overwhelm him with simultaneous strikes evident. The ground quakes under the force of their advance, stones and debris scattering like sparks from a forge. Clare's eyes follow every movement, aura flaring, yoki compressed and ready to assist if needed, yet she hesitates. Even her experience with awakened beings tells her that direct intervention could escalate the situation beyond control. Jin-Woo's movements remain deliberate, measured, almost lethargic to any observer, yet every subtle shift manipulates the battlefield to his advantage. One Claymore attempts a high vertical strike aimed to bypass the shadows, only to find the force redirected into the fractured stone beneath, splintering the ground while leaving him perfectly unharmed. Another lunges from the side, yoki surging violently, yet a tendril of darkness curls around his weapon mid-swing, guiding it harmlessly aside without leaving a mark. The organization's warriors begin to falter. Coordination weakens as doubt spreads. Even the most disciplined hesitate, questioning the reliability of their training against a force that appears to anticipate their every decision. The lead Claymore's voice rises, trying to maintain control, shouting orders, coordinating adjustments. Yet the effects are minimal. Jin-Woo's shadows respond instantaneously, redirecting momentum, absorbing energy, subtly adjusting angles, and maintaining dominance without ever needing to strike lethally. Each Claymore realizes the uncomfortable truth. They are no longer the hunters. They are being studied, probed, and contained by a predator whose rules are entirely alien to this world. Clare steps forward cautiously, yoki flaring with measured bursts, her aura sharp and silver eyes focused. She understands the stakes. Jin-Woo is not simply defending himself. He is controlling the flow of combat, testing every variable, observing limits, and asserting dominance without violence. She can feel the immense pressure radiating from his presence, a silent command that bends instinct and energy alike. Even the organization's strongest are reacting to him rather than executing their own strategies. The very battlefield has become a tool in his hands. The lead Claymore attempts to adjust the formation, compressing yoki into concentrated bursts. Coordinating simultaneous attacks aimed at his shadow tendrils, hoping to break through the subtle manipulations. Their blades converge in a synchronized assault designed to overwhelm, yet the shadows respond like living instruments, coiling, redirecting, absorbing energy. One strike is deflected into another, creating a chain reaction that destabilizes their approach. Another swing meets resistance mid-air, the kinetic energy diverted harmlessly into the fractured street. Panic flickers briefly in the eyes of even the highest-ranked fighters. They have trained for centuries to kill Yoma, awakened beings, and rogue claymores, yet none of their experience prepares them for an entity capable of controlling movement, energy and instinct with such precision. Jin-Woo finally moves, not with brute force, not with aggression, but with the fluid certainty of a sovereign. Shadows surge outward, coiling around multiple claymores at once, restricting movement without causing fatal harm. The pressure of his presence grows heavier, impossible to ignore, bending their intentions and compressing their options. The lead claymore struggles, muscles straining, yoki flaring in response to the invisible control, yet the shadows adapt instantaneously, neutralizing bursts without leaving him vulnerable. The elite warriors exchange quick glances, fear tempered with disbelief. They are powerful, experienced, and disciplined. Yet against Jin-Woo, they are being dominated without a single lethal strike. Clare watches, every muscle tensed, every sense alert. The situation is no longer about stopping Jin-Woo. It is about survival and understanding the magnitude of the force before them. She can see subtle cracks forming in the confidence of the organization's elite, hesitation growing as they realize the full scale of the predator they face. Jin-Woo steps lightly, shadows responding to the faintest tremor of yoki, every micro-movement catalogued and countered. The battlefield itself seems to obey him, every crack, every beam, every fragment of debris subtly manipulated to restrict the Claymore's options, while leaving him untouched. The lead Claymore signals another coordinated attack, desperate to regain initiative. Yoki pulses violently through their weapons, energy compressed and sharpened for lethal precision. The others follow, their movements synchronized, yet every strike meets resistance, redirection, or absorption by shadows that bend the laws of engagement without a single visible effort. The elite warriors are forced to react, adapt, and hesitate simultaneously. They realize fully that conventional tactics, even combined force and experience, are insufficient. The organization's response has escalated the encounter, but in doing so, it has confirmed a terrifying truth. Jin-Woo is a sovereign predator in a world unprepared to challenge him. Clare exhales sharply, aura flaring with measured bursts, aware that if Jin-Woo decides to escalate beyond containment, even these elite warriors would stand no chance. The air vibrates with tension, charged with yoki and shadows, every second a testament to the disparity in power. Jin-Woo surveys the battlefield, eyes scanning each claymore, calculating, assessing, and asserting silent dominance. Their movements, once decisive and confident, now carry the hesitation of those who realize they are confronting a force beyond comprehension. The organization may have responded, but they are already on the defensive. Jin-Woo has claimed control of the encounter, and every subtle motion, every shadow, every controlled pulse reminds them of a single undeniable fact. Their hierarchy, their experience, and their skill are no longer sufficient. The predator they face does not fight by their rules. He defines the battlefield entirely on his own terms, and the organization is witnessing, perhaps for the first time, the true meaning of being outmatched. The tremors from the Claymore engagement ripple far beyond the village, awakening forces that have lain dormant in the shadowed depths of the mountains. The faintest pulse of yoki shifts unnaturally, vibrating with a resonance that the organization has not sensed for centuries. Deep in caverns carved from black stone, abyssal beings stir, drawn to the unprecedented energy surge. They are monstrous entities of raw instinct, half-formed nightmares that feed on yoki and despair, creatures that even the organization's top warriors dread encountering. For the first time in decades, their senses detect a presence unlike any Yoma or awakened being. It is intelligent, adaptive, and terrifyingly powerful, and it has already disrupted the natural order. Above ground, the elite claymores realize something is changing. Their synchronized attacks falter as distant tremors distort their footing. Dust and rubble scatter, not from their own movements, but from unseen forces rippling through the terrain. Clare notices the subtle shifts first, silver eyes narrowing, aura flaring as the temperature drops, and the air thickens. There is a weight pressing down, not entirely physical, not entirely energy, but a pressure that seeps into the bones and nerves. The organization's warriors tense, gripping their silver blades tighter as instinct screams warning. They have fought monsters that were predictable, patterns they could analyze, weaknesses they could exploit. This is different. This is chaos given form, a primordial instinct incarnate that ignores strategy entirely. From the shadows between fractured cliffs, the first abyssal beings emerge. Towering shapes, grotesque and malformed, glisten with oily black skin that seems to absorb light rather than reflect it. Limbs twist at impossible angles, claws as long as a man's torso, mouths opening into gaping voids filled with jagged, irregular teeth. Eyes, if they can be called that, glow faintly red in the darkness, scanning, calculating, and feeding on the fear and yoki present in the battlefield. Their movements are both fluid and unnatural, bones bending in ways that should be impossible, muscles rippling in silent, terrifying coordination. The very ground seems to recoil under their presence. The elite Claymores hesitate for the first time. They were prepared for coordinated threats, for Yoma in numbers, for rogue awakened beings, but this is something else entirely. Their silver blades, once enough to cut through hordes of monsters, feel insignificant against entities that ignore conventional anatomy and can regenerate or adapt to injury instantaneously. Their yoki surges violently, trying to assert dominance, but the abyssal beings respond with a psychic, instinctual resonance, nullifying bursts and redirecting force with movements that seem chaotic yet are terrifyingly precise. Even the most experienced warriors feel instinctively that their strength may not be sufficient to survive this encounter. Clare steps forward, recognizing the danger, her eyes scanning the approaching nightmare forms. Her silver aura flares in defensive pulses as she assesses each creature, noting its pattern, its movement, its intent. These abyssal beings are not acting with malice in a human sense. They operate entirely on instinct and survival. Yet their instinct is lethal, unerring, and terrifyingly adaptive. Every step they take fractures stone. Every movement generates a wave of oppressive energy that strains the limits of yoki. Clare knows that if Jin-Woo had not intervened in the initial battle, even the top-ranked warriors would be overwhelmed by this new threat before understanding it. Jin-Woo observes calmly, standing in the midst of the fractured village, shadows coiling like a living net beneath his feet. He does not move immediately, instead allowing the abyssal beings to approach, their grotesque forms advancing with primal intent. His eyes track each creature with a calculating precision, assessing strength, movement patterns, and potential weaknesses. He understands instinctively that these are not simple monsters. They are forces of adaptation, born from the deep, feeding on the raw energies of this world. The organization's warriors are tense, but his calm radiates outward, subtle and controlled, influencing the flow of energy in ways they cannot perceive. The first abyssal being lunges. Its claws tear through stone, aimed at the lead Claymore with lethal precision. Yoki flares in response, silver blades swinging in a coordinated arc to intercept. But the creature's speed is unnatural, limbs bending and elongating in ways that make timing nearly impossible. Jin-Woo reacts almost imperceptibly, a tendril of shadow surging forward to intercept mid-air. The contact is seamless, the Claymore is unharmed, the creature diverted. The others pause, momentarily stunned, as their perception struggles to reconcile what just occurred. Shadows have become an extension of reality itself, manipulating instinct and force in a way that no human or hybrid has ever encountered. The abyssal beings continue their advance, dozens now emerging from the darkness, each one as horrifying and unpredictable as the last. Their movement is erratic yet terrifyingly coordinated, a swarm that operates with a singular instinctive will. Even the organization's elite, trained for absolute precision and capable of overwhelming multiple Yoma simultaneously, find themselves forced onto the defensive. Each strike they make is met with unexpected redirection, each surge of Yoki absorbed or neutralized, and the creatures adapt instantaneously to every tactic. Clare notices that their instincts are not just reactive, they predict, anticipate, and evolve mid-combat, forcing her to adjust strategies constantly. Jin-Woo's expression remains calm, unreadable, but his shadows ripple aggressively now, expanding outward, coiling and twisting to intercept multiple threats at once. Tendrils strike with precise timing, not to kill, but to redirect, restrain, and control. He steps lightly, seemingly unaffected by the chaos around him, yet each motion dictates the flow of the battlefield. The abyssal beings lunge, twist, and strike, and yet the shadows manipulate space itself, bending attacks into harmless trajectories. Even the lead Claymore, Yoki surging violently, can barely comprehend the scale of his mastery. Clare senses the pressure intensifying. The combination of Jin-Woo's calculated control and the primal chaos of the abyssal beings creates an environment where conventional tactics are obsolete. Every movement, every strike, every defensive posture must be reconsidered. She adjusts, compressing her Yoki further, preparing to intervene if a creature breaches his manipulations. But it is clear even to her that Jin-Woo is not only handling the threat, he is teaching, restraining, and dominating simultaneously. The organization's response, the elite Claymore's coordination, and the primal force of the abyssal beings collide in a violent symphony, yet Jin-Woo's calm remains the axis upon which all movement pivots. The ground shakes violently as more abyssal beings pour from the shadows, their grotesque forms filling the streets, crushing debris underfoot, eyes glowing faintly red with instinctual intent. The elite Claymores attempt to create a perimeter, blades flashing, Yoki surging. But every action is anticipated and countered subtly by shadows that move as extensions of Jin-Woo's will. The creature's attacks are relentless, yet never fully lethal, redirected or absorbed without breaking their primal momentum. Panic flickers briefly across the faces of the most experienced warriors. They are confronting a predator that not only dominates instinct, but also controls the battlefield itself. The abyssal beings close in further, jaws snapping, claws rending air, their presence crushing both morale and structure alike. Clare flanks, moving instinctively to intercept, aura flaring violently, yet she realizes that her interventions alone would be insufficient to contain this threat. Jin-Woo's shadows pulse outward, tendrils wrapping around multiple attackers, bending trajectories, restricting movement, and asserting dominance without leaving a mark. The creatures respond instinctively, adapting mid-strike, but each adjustment is catalogued and countered almost invisibly. The organization's elite feel the weight of the situation pressing down upon them. Yoki surges, blades flash, and yet they are forced into defensive postures, reacting to movements dictated not by the abyssal beings alone, but by the predator controlling the battlefield. Jin-Woo steps forward lightly, shadows coiling, manipulating the chaos, and asserting silent authority over both friend and foe. The abyssal beings continue to press forward, instinctive aggression driving them, yet they cannot touch him directly. The ground quakes, dust and debris swirl, and the organization realizes fully that their hierarchy, their elite warriors, and even their most disciplined strategies are insufficient against the combination of Jin-Woo's sovereignty and the raw instinct of the abyssal beings. The battlefield is a chaotic symphony of instinct, control, and energy, yet one constant remains. Jin-Woo stands at the center, shadows alive, measured, and absolutely dominant. Every Claymore knows instinctively that this is no longer just a battle. It is a reckoning. The abyssal beings, drawn by energy they cannot fully comprehend, clash against shadows they cannot penetrate, while the organization's finest warriors struggle to assert control. In this moment, the predator has become the axis of the world around him. bending instinct, energy, and strategy simultaneously. The abyssal being's advance, while relentless, only serves to highlight the unyielding calm and precision of the force at the center. Every pulse of Yoki, every twitch of shadow, every subtle movement contributes to a single, undeniable truth. Jin-Woo is beyond comprehension, beyond hierarchy, and far beyond the expectations of this universe. The organization has responded, the abyssal beings have entered, and the battlefield has become a controlled chaos under a sovereign predator whose dominion stretches far beyond the physical. Every elite warrior, every silver blade, every instinct is being tested, cataloged, and restrained. The encounter has escalated to a level no one in this world has ever witnessed. And Jin-Woo remains at the eye of the storm, perfectly calm, perfectly calculating, and utterly untouchable. The abyssal beings press forward relentlessly, their monstrous forms rippling with instinctive aggression. But Jin-Woo's shadows move with a precision that renders their attacks ineffective. Tendrils coil and twist around limbs, redirecting strikes, absorbing momentum, and subtly manipulating the battlefield without breaking form. Even when multiple creatures converge from different angles, the shadows adjust instantaneously, bending their paths, nullifying kinetic energy, and controlling space with surgical accuracy. The organization's elite Claymore struggle to maintain formation, their Yoki flaring in desperate bursts that fail to achieve impact, as their coordinated attacks are subtly manipulated into harmless collisions or redirected force. Clare observes, aura flaring, realizing that even the combined power of Jin-Woo and the organization may not be enough to fully contain this unfolding chaos. The abyssal beings, though instinct-driven, are terrifyingly adaptive. One lunges from the side with claws snapping, twisting its body mid-air in ways that defy natural anatomy. Another swings a massive limb in a wide arc, aiming to crush any resistance. Yet every strike is anticipated. Jin-Woo does not need to move visibly. His shadows respond faster than thought, wrapping around limbs, guiding momentum into the earth, and ensuring that no direct harm reaches him or Clare. Even when multiple creatures coordinate instinctively, attempting to overwhelm, the shadows coil and stretch, isolating each attack, manipulating angles, and controlling impact with effortless dominance. The battlefield trembles under the force of these interactions, yet Jin-Woo remains calm, the eye of the storm amidst absolute chaos. Clare steps forward cautiously, Yoki compressing into sharp defensive pulses, ready to intervene if any creature breaches Jin-Woo's control. She recognizes the threat magnitude instantly. These abyssal beings are not merely dangerous. They operate on a level of primal instinct that makes their movements unpredictable, yet simultaneously coherent, almost as if guided by a singular awareness. The organization's elite warriors, however disciplined, now face a dilemma they have never encountered. Fighting one impossible opponent is daunting, but contending with dozens of adaptive, instinct-driven monsters while under the influence of a predator who controls the battlefield exceeds all prior experience. Their confidence falters, hesitation flickers in their eyes, and Yoki begins to surge more violently as instinct battles instinct, energy against energy. Jin-Woo steps lightly across fractured stone, shadows rippling outward like liquid tendrils that manipulate every attack. Before it can land, one abyssal being lunges directly at him, jaws snapping, claws extended. The shadow tendrils coil around its limbs mid-motion, guiding the strike harmlessly into the ground. Another creature twists violently to flank him from behind, yet a subtle ripple of shadow intercepts mid-air, diverting momentum and redirecting its trajectory. The creature's adaptive instincts are formidable, yet against the silent intelligence of Jin-Woo, they struggle to land meaningful attacks. Every surge of aggression is cataloged, countered, and restrained without lethal force, yet the pressure they exert is palpable. The organization's lead, Claymore, shouts commands, attempting to rally the elite warriors. They form a tighter perimeter, trying to contain the abyssal beings while supporting Clare. Blades flash, Yoki surges, and yet each coordinated effort is met with Jin-Woo's subtle manipulation. Shadows bend attacks into harmless trajectories, redirect momentum into the fractured terrain, and isolate strikes so that they collide ineffectively. The elite warriors' frustration grows. Instinct alone is failing, skill alone is insufficient, and even their combined strength cannot match the adaptability and sovereignty of the predator at the center. The abyssal beings begin to sense the control exerted over them. Their instinct drives them to attack, yet every movement is manipulated, every strike subtly redirected. They twist and contort in ways that seem chaotic, yet Jin-Woo's shadows neutralize the chaos with uncanny precision. The creatures adapt, learning from failed attempts, but their adaptation is slower than the predator's intelligence. Each micro-adjustment he makes anticipates and counteracts their instinctive maneuvers before they fully manifest. Even the organization's most disciplined warriors cannot follow the rhythm he imposes upon the battlefield. Clare's silver aura flares violently as she assesses the scene. Jin-Woo is not only controlling the abyssal beings but also indirectly guiding the flow of the organization's elite. Every subtle shift of shadow, every extension of tendril dictates the pace of combat. The creatures are forced into positions of vulnerability even as they attack. Their instincts manipulated without fully understanding why they cannot succeed. The Claymores themselves realize that conventional strategy is obsolete. Every decision is now reactive, every instinct measured against an opponent who does not simply respond, but dominates the battlefield entirely. The ground quakes violently under the weight of combined energy. Stones fracture, dust clouds swirl, and debris ricochets from the force of redirected attacks. Yet Jin-Woo remains calm, composed, and almost serene amidst the chaos. Shadows ripple and coil, extending in multiple directions to intercept, isolate, and control simultaneously. Tendrils weave around multiple abyssal beings at once, bending their kinetic force into the earth while leaving them unharmed, guiding them as though puppets under a master's control. The elite Claymores tighten their grip, Yoki flaring violently, yet the effectiveness of their strikes diminishes under the quiet dominance of a predator who has become the central axis of the battlefield. Every motion, every strike, every surge of instinct is catalogued and analyzed by Jin-Woo. His eyes scan the field, noting micro-adjustments in the creature's movements, subtle reactions in the Claymores, and environmental changes caused by the ongoing clash. He does not panic, does not overcommit, and does not need to strike lethally. Control itself is his weapon, and the chaos surrounding him bends to his will. The organization's finest feel the cold certainty that survival alone will require unprecedented levels of skill, instinct, and luck. The abyssal beings continue to press forward, yet every advance is manipulated, redirected, and contained. The predator at the center remains untouchable, the master of both friend and foe, and the battlefield has become a living testament to his absolute dominance. The elite Claymores exchange fleeting glances, their silver eyes wide with comprehension and fear. The rules of engagement have shifted entirely. Conventional tactics are meaningless. Instinct alone is insufficient. The abyssal beings, adaptive and relentless, collide against shadows that manipulate momentum, force, and space itself. Clare flares her Yoki, moving cautiously to intervene, yet even she understands the magnitude of the force controlling the battlefield. Jin-Woo steps lightly, shadows pulsing outward like living extensions of his will, dominating every interaction, bending the instincts of monsters and warriors alike. The organization has responded with its elite, and the abyssal beings have entered in force, yet one undeniable truth stands. Jin-Woo is untouchable, sovereign, and entirely in control of the chaos he has allowed to unfold. The abyssal being's advance grows more frenzied, a wave of primal instinct pushing forward with teeth, claws, and limbs that seem to defy natural form. Their grotesque bodies ripple and twist, blackened flesh glistening, eyes glowing faintly with predatory awareness. Every motion carries lethal intent, yet Jin-Woo does not flinch. His shadows ripple subtly, coiling and stretching, each tendril acting independently yet in perfect harmony with his will. Some wrap around claws mid-strike, redirecting momentum into the fractured ground. Others entwine limbs, restricting movement without breaking the creature, forcing instinct into submission while cataloging its every motion. He does not strike lethally. He does not need to. Control is his weapon, and the battlefield bends to him with quiet inevitability. Clare moves cautiously alongside him, her aura flaring silver and sharp, Yoki compressed into precise bursts that arc defensively as she reads the shifting patterns of the abyssal beings. She recognizes the magnitude of Jin-Woo's dominance. These creatures, driven entirely by instinct and predation, are rendered incapable of harming him directly. Their movements, no matter how violent or erratic, are anticipated and redirected with surgical precision. The organization's elite Claymores, their blades flashing and Yoki pulsing violently, struggle to understand the rhythm of a battle where offense is met with subtle manipulation rather than outright confrontation. Confidence falters in their eyes, hesitation creeps into their muscles, and even their combined strength begins to feel insufficient against the sovereign predator at the center. The first abyssal being lunges again, twisting impossibly mid-air to deliver a downward strike that should pierce any conventional defense. Jin-Woo's shadow tendrils coil instantly, intercepting the strike mid-motion, absorbing its force, and redirecting the kinetic energy harmlessly into the fractured earth. Another creature arcs from the side, claws extended in a wide, sweeping motion. A shadow ripple curls outward, bending the trajectory and leaving the Claymore warriors momentarily stunned as they watch their attacks fail again. The abyssal beings adapt, instinct driving them to modify angles and timing, yet the shadows respond faster than their cognition allows, maintaining dominance while simultaneously cataloging their adjustments. The battlefield becomes a dance of instinct and manipulation, chaos restrained by intelligence beyond comprehension. The organization's lead Claymore barks orders, trying to maintain cohesion among the elite warriors. Yet their coordination begins to falter under the invisible influence of Jin-Woo's shadows. Yoki surges in desperate, concentrated bursts, blades flash with lethal intent, yet each strike meets subtle counterforce, redirection, or nullification. Even the most disciplined feel their instincts overridden, their strategies dismantled before they can fully execute them. The abyssal beings, adaptive as they are, cannot fully overcome the predator controlling the field. Every attack they attempt is met with subtle, invisible opposition, every advance funneled into positions of vulnerability without ever realizing it. Survival is no longer assured by skill alone. Understanding and adaptation on a level they have never experienced become essential. Clare tightens her grip on her blade, aura flaring in sharp bursts, ready to intervene if Jin-Woo deems it necessary. She watches him carefully, noting how every shadow, every tendril, every ripple of darkness responds to attacks before they fully manifest. He is not merely defending. He is dictating the terms of the encounter, bending both ally and adversary alike to the rhythm of his observation and analysis. The abyssal beings strike again and again, limbs twisting, jaws snapping, claws tearing, yet each movement is absorbed, redirected, or controlled without visible effort. Even the lead Claymore feels the oppressive weight of Jin-Woo's presence, realizing that the battlefield is no longer theirs to command. The sheer scale of the conflict grows as more abyssal beings emerge from shadowed fissures and cavern entrances, drawn by the unprecedented energy flowing through the area. Their forms are grotesque and varied, some taller than buildings, others twisted with limbs that bend in impossible ways. Each movement is instinct-driven but lethally precise, designed to overwhelm any normal defender. Yet Jin-Woo's shadows ripple outward in silent authority, extending to intercept multiple attacks simultaneously. Tendrils coil around limbs, redirect strikes into harmless angles, and manipulate space itself to ensure that no creature can reach him or Clare directly. Every advance of the monsters is met with restraint and control, creating a controlled chaos that the elite Claymores can neither comprehend nor replicate. The elite warriors of the organization attempt to adjust formation, concentrating their yoki into coordinated bursts to break through the subtle manipulations of Jin-Woo's shadows. Blades converge, angles shift, and kinetic force surges like lightning. Yet the shadows bend trajectories, absorb energy, and redirect momentum without ever allowing a single strike to land meaningfully. The abyssal beings twist and adapt in real time, but the predator at the center of the battlefield maintains perfect awareness, countering instinct with precise calculation. Even the organization's most disciplined fighters are forced into defensive postures, their strategies dismantled as they react to forces beyond their comprehension. The village itself trembles under the weight of this clash. Fractured stones shift, dust and debris swirl in chaotic patterns, and the air hums with a mixture of yoki and primal energy. Clare, aura blazing, observes the relentless push of the abyssal beings, aware that any breach of Jin-Woo's control could result in disaster. Yet he remains calm, standing amidst the chaos as shadows ripple like liquid, guiding every attack, isolating every threat, and maintaining dominance with minimal visible effort. The creatures lunge, twist, and strike with increasing desperation. Yet every movement is anticipated, every instinct countered, and every attack nullified without lethal force. Even the lead Claymore begins to comprehend the magnitude of what they are facing. Conventional understanding of power, skill, and hierarchy no longer applies. The abyssal beings are relentless, adaptive, and terrifyingly instinctive. Yet they collide against shadows that bend, absorb, and redirect energy faster than they can adjust. The organization's finest warriors are forced into reaction, forced to adapt, and forced to acknowledge that this is no ordinary engagement. Jin-Woo stands at the center, shadows alive, moving with intelligence, patience, and calm dominance that reshapes the battlefield itself. The predator has arrived. The abyssal beings have entered. And the organization can only watch as an entirely new hierarchy of power asserts itself silently, yet irresistibly. The chaos continues, the tremors grow, and the clash of instinct against calculated sovereignty escalates. Jin-Woo's dominance is absolute, his control over shadows and battlefield mechanics unparalleled. Every yoki surge, every instinctive maneuver, every coordinated attack is rendered ineffective or subtly manipulated. The abyssal beings press on, the organization struggles to contain them, and Clare realizes that even her combined power with Jin-Woo would be insufficient if he did not choose to manage the battlefield meticulously. He is untouchable, sovereign, and entirely in command of the chaos. In this moment, the rules of survival and combat are rewritten under his control, and every participant, human, monster, or hybrid, feels the undeniable weight of his presence. Imagine this: Sung Jin-Woo, the Shadow Monarch, stands at the heart of a ruined village, surrounded by both the elite Claymores of the organization and a relentless horde of abyssal beings. Every muscle, every shadow, every extension of his will pulses with precision and dominance. His eyes sweep across the battlefield, scanning, analyzing, and asserting silent authority over friend, foe, and monster alike. The curse of awakening, a force that has lingered in the Claymore universe as a dangerous anomaly capable of triggering mass mutation and uncontrollable power surges, begins to stir in response to the unprecedented energies Jin-Woo has unleashed. It senses him, not merely as a threat, but as a singular force capable of redefining its own existence. The ground trembles violently as blackened rifts begin opening in multiple locations around the village. Faint screams of incomprehensible agony echo from these fractures, carrying a psychic resonance that rattles even the most disciplined claymores. The curse of awakening is not an enemy in a conventional sense. It is a pervasive, adaptive force that feeds on energy, chaos, and fear, and it has recognized the strongest predator to ever step into this world. From the depths of these rifts emerge figures that were once human, now grotesque amalgamations of muscle, bone, and yoki-infused mutation. Their forms twist in impossible angles, limbs contorting in ways that defy natural anatomy, eyes glowing with an eerie luminescence, and jagged teeth snapping as they surge forward, instinctively seeking to absorb or eliminate any source of strong energy. The organization's elite warriors immediately engage, blades flashing and yoki surging, yet every strike is met with unpredictable resilience and counter-adaptation. Jin-Woo observes calmly as the mass of awakened entities charges, shadows rippling beneath his feet like liquid obsidian. Each shadow extends outward with autonomous precision, coiling around multiple targets simultaneously, restraining their movement without lethal engagement, redirecting momentum, and neutralizing threats with minimal effort. Tendrils wrap around limbs, pulling attacks into harmless collisions with the fractured terrain, while other shadows snake across the battlefield, subtly influencing the instincts of both the Claymores and the Abyssal beings. His presence radiates dominance, a silent command that bends instinct, energy, and willpower alike. Even the lead Claymore, whose yoki flares with the intensity of the highest-ranking warriors, cannot fully comprehend the scale of Jin-Woo's control. The curse of awakening responds intelligently, sending forth waves of newly emerged awakened forms with increasing aggression. Each wave tests Jin-Woo's control, probing for weaknesses, attempting to overwhelm his shadow manipulation with sheer numbers and unpredictable attacks. Massive limbs smash into debris, jagged claws swipe in arcs designed to trap and crush, and psychic reverberations ripple outward to destabilize both human and monster alike. Yet Jin-Woo's shadows respond flawlessly. Every thrust, swipe, and strike is redirected, absorbed, or controlled with calculated efficiency. Tendrils coil around incoming attacks mid-air, isolating momentum and ensuring that no lethal damage reaches him or Clare. Even when multiple forms converge from all sides, the shadows adapt instantaneously, bending the battlefield to his command while leaving the aggressors restrained but unharmed, a silent message of dominance. Clare flanks cautiously, aura flaring violently, yoki concentrated and precise. She can intervene if necessary, yet she understands instinctively that Jin-Woo's control is absolute. The mass of awakened beings surges like a tide, yet their instinct-driven attacks are rendered largely ineffective by the subtle manipulation of shadows that move as extensions of Jin-Woo's will. Every advance is contained, every strike absorbed or redirected, and every creature manipulated into positions of vulnerability. The organization's elite claymores are forced into constant reaction, unable to assert their usual dominance, watching as their combined strength is carefully neutralized without lethal engagement. Doubt flickers in their eyes. Even the most experienced warriors recognize that they are witnessing something beyond comprehension, a predator who not only controls energy but rewrites the very rules of instinct and engagement. The curse of awakening, sensing a force beyond its chaotic dominion, intensifies. The rifts pulse violently, spewing waves of energy that warp the environment, creating fissures, crumbling buildings, and violent eruptions of stone and dust. More twisted, awakened entities surge forth, their limbs bending unnaturally, their teeth gnashing, and their eyes glowing with hunger and recognition of Jin-Woo's unparalleled power. One massive form, towering and grotesque, emerges from the largest rift, limbs longer than a man, armored in irregular jagged plating fused with raw yoki. Its head twists impossibly, mouth opening to reveal rows of irregular jagged teeth, exhaling a psychic scream that ripples across the battlefield. The organization's elite titan formation, yoki flaring, yet even their coordination feels futile against the overwhelming combination of instinct-driven aggression and Jin-Woo's absolute manipulation of shadows. Jin-Woo tilts his head, shadows rippling outward in anticipation. Tendrils extend a coil around the massive awakened being, subtly influencing its movement mid-lunge, redirecting momentum harmlessly into rubble while restraining limbs without harm. Smaller awakened creatures collide into shadow tendrils, their attacks neutralized even as they adapt instinctively to his manipulations. The battlefield becomes a controlled chaos. Every surge of the curse of awakening cataloged and countered with efficiency that defies human understanding. Even the lead Claymore realizes that survival now depends not on skill alone, but on aligning with the predator at the center who bends the flow of battle itself. The abyssal beings, still present and instinctually aggressive, twist their bodies to engage the new threat. Jin-Woo's shadows adapt fluidly, restraining both abyssal and awakened beings, forcing collisions into harmless trajectories and absorbing kinetic energy with calculated precision. The clash of instinct, energy, and will creates tremors that shake the fractured village, dust and debris swirling violently in the air. The elite Claymores attempt coordinated strikes, yoki surging in concentrated bursts, yet each effort is intercepted or subtly manipulated, reinforcing the realization that conventional combat has no impact against a predator capable of controlling the battlefield at multiple levels simultaneously. The massive awakened being at the forefront roars, a psychic wave radiating outward in an attempt to destabilize Jin-Woo's shadows. The ground fractures violently, yet the Shadow Monarch remains calm, extending tendrils to coil around limbs, absorb kinetic energy, and subtly manipulate both motion and instinct. Smaller awakened creatures surge in waves, attempting to overwhelm, yet each surge is met with calculated control. Shadows move autonomously, restraining, redirecting, and isolating threats without breaking form or using lethal force. Even the lead Claymore, silver blade flashing and yoki compressed to maximum, cannot land a decisive blow. The battle has escalated beyond human comprehension, the curse of awakening now fully manifesting, yet Jin-Woo remains untouchable, sovereign and entirely in command of the chaos swirling around him. The organization watches the abyssal beings press, the awakened surge, and Clare flanks cautiously, yet one undeniable truth dominates. Jin-Woo, the Shadow Monarch, does not merely survive the onslaught. He dominates, restrains, manipulates, and catalogs every attack, every instinct, every surge of energy with precision and patience. The curse of awakening recognizes him not as a mortal adversary, but as a force capable of redefining its own chaotic existence. The battlefield trembles under the weight of converging forces, yet he stands perfectly calm at the center, shadows alive, weaving dominance over friend, foe, and nightmare alike. The rules of engagement, survival, and hierarchy have been rewritten in real time under his absolute control, and every participant senses the inevitability of his sovereignty. The awakened surge relentlessly, a tide of grotesque forms twisting unnaturally, yet every lunge, swing, and psychic wave is anticipated and countered by Jin-Woo's shadows. Tendrils coil around massive limbs mid-motion, redirecting strikes harmlessly into crumbling stone or dirt while maintaining perfect balance across the battlefield. Smaller awakened creatures are restrained with subtle precision, pulled off course or immobilized without injury, their instincts manipulated as though puppets under a master's control. The abyssal beings, still aggressive, twist and leap toward openings that no longer exist, their attacks neutralized seamlessly by shadow tendrils that weave between them like living threads of control. The ground shakes with the weight of colliding energy and instinct, debris swirling in chaotic currents, yet Jin-Woo remains perfectly calm, the eye of the storm controlling every motion, every outcome. Clare moves cautiously, silver aura flaring, Yoki compressed into sharp bursts, constantly reassessing positions as Jin-Woo manipulates multiple threats simultaneously. The elite Claymores attempt coordinated strikes, trying to target key awakened entities. Yet each effort is subtly manipulated before they can land effective blows. Their confidence begins to waver. The battlefield is no longer theirs to command. Even their experience and discipline are insufficient to contend with a force that bends instinct, energy, and terrain with perfect precision. The curse of awakening feeds on chaos, yet it finds itself restrained, unable to overwhelm the predator at the center. Every surge of instinct is countered, every attempted breach nullified, and every attack catalogued for instantaneous adaptation. A massive awakened being, its body a twisted amalgam of jagged limbs and Yoki-fused muscle, lunges from the largest rift with claws extended and jaws snapping. Jin-Woo shifts only slightly, a subtle ripple of shadow moving faster than thought itself. The tendrils coil around the creature's limbs, absorbing momentum, redirecting the strike into the fractured earth and leaving it perfectly unharmed yet restrained. Smaller awakened creatures twist violently around the larger being, instinctively attempting to flank Jin-Woo, yet each movement is countered with invisible precision. Even the lead Claymore, Yoki, flaring at maximum output, watches helplessly as attacks fail to land and the battlefield continues to bend entirely under the Shadow Monarch's control. The curse of awakening intensifies, more rifts tearing open across the village, erupting with grotesque forms driven entirely by instinct and a latent drive to dominate the strongest source of energy. Jin-Woo's shadows ripple outward like an extension of his will, coiling around limbs, absorbing kinetic energy, manipulating space, and isolating threats without ever breaking his calm. The abyssal beings adjust their movements, attempting to exploit openings, yet their adaptations are continually outpaced by the instantaneous control exerted through the shadows. The clash of instinct and sovereignty generates tremors that rock the fractured village, dust and debris swirling violently, yet Jin-Woo remains untouchable, orchestrating the chaos with calculated authority. Clare flanks closer, Yoki flaring violently, aura sharp and controlled. She moves to intercept a particularly large awakened creature lunging toward a compromised position. Yet even her intervention is enhanced by the subtle influence of Jin-Woo's shadows. Tendrils coil around the creature, guiding its motion, absorbing energy, and redirecting momentum harmlessly while maintaining overall control. Every strike, every movement, every instinct is catalogued and countered with minimal visible effort, demonstrating the absolute dominance of the Shadow Monarch. The organization's elite Claymores tighten formation, blades flashing, Yoki compressed into concentrated bursts, yet even their combined power is rendered insufficient to impact the battlefield decisively. The massive awakened entity at the forefront lets out a psychic scream, attempting to destabilize Jin-Woo's control and the very space around him. The air vibrates violently, fissures open under the force, and instinctive tremors radiate through both Claymores and abyssal beings alike. Yet Jin-Woo's shadows adapt instantaneously. Tendrils extend and coil, absorbing energy, restraining limbs, and manipulating the battlefield to neutralize the psychic impact. Smaller awakened creatures, still instinctively aggressive, collide harmlessly into shadow tendrils, redirected or restrained without injury. Every surge of chaos is met with calm authority, every instinct overridden without aggression, proving that dominance does not require destruction when precision and control are absolute. The elite Claymores exchange fleeting glances, silver eyes wide with realization. They are no longer executing strategy. They are reacting to forces beyond comprehension. Yoki pulses violently. Blades flash in concentrated bursts, yet attacks are neutralized, redirected, or absorbed. Even the most disciplined feel instinct overridden and strategy dismantled in real time. The abyssal beings, still aggressive and instinct-driven, twist, leap, and strike at perceived openings, yet every movement is manipulated with absolute precision. Jin-Woo's control has become the defining axis of the battlefield, dictating the flow of combat and the outcome of every action without a single visible lethal strike. Jin-Woo steps lightly across fractured stone, shadows rippling like living extensions of his will, coiling around multiple awakened and abyssal entities at once. Tendrils guide momentum, isolate attacks, and subtly restrain instincts. Even the massive rift-born creature, towering above all, finds its movements restricted mid-lunge, kinetic force absorbed into the fractured terrain, and limbs subtly redirected without harm. The curse of awakening itself seems to hesitate, as if recognizing the impossibility of overwhelming a predator capable of rewriting instinct and controlling energy on such a scale. The organization, the abyssal beings, and the awakened forces all confront the same reality. Jin-Woo is untouchable, sovereign, and in absolute command of every action, every instinct, and every outcome across the battlefield. The air vibrates with tension and energy. Tremors rock the terrain. Dust and debris swirl violently, and psychic reverberations from the awakened surge outward in waves meant to disrupt and destroy. Yet each wave is countered, each instinct redirected, each threat isolated and restrained. Clare moves in perfect coordination with the Shadow Monarch, aura flaring, yoki pulsing in response to subtle shifts, yet fully aware that she is observing mastery that exceeds any combat she has ever experienced. The elite Claymores struggle to maintain formation, yoki surging in desperate attempts to regain control, yet every effort is nullified or manipulated. Jin-Woo does not need to strike. Control itself is sufficient. The curse of awakening sends a massive psychic pulse, warping reality around the rifts, twisting terrain, shaking stone, and overwhelming instinct. Yet Jin-Woo's shadows ripple outward, coiling and weaving with flawless precision. Tendrils restrain, absorb, and redirect kinetic energy and psychic resonance simultaneously. Smaller awakened creatures are immobilized mid-motion, abyssal beings are subtly manipulated, and the massive rift-born entity is guided into harmless trajectories without injury. The organization's elite realize fully that conventional combat has no impact here. Survival depends entirely on aligning with the predator at the center, whose calm and calculated control dictates the flow of instinct, energy, and engagement across the battlefield. The battlefield has transformed into a controlled chaos, orchestrated entirely by Jin-Woo. Tendrils extend in every direction, manipulating space, momentum, and instinct. Every entity, whether Claymore, abyssal, or awakened, is subtly restrained, redirected, or absorbed, unable to assert independent control. The curse of awakening continues to surge, but its attempts at domination are continuously countered, neutralized, and catalogued. The Shadow Monarch does not merely survive. He dominates, restrains, manipulates, and asserts absolute sovereignty over the chaos, demonstrating that mastery is measured not in brute force, but in perfect control over every variable, every instinct, and every outcome on the battlefield. The massive awakened entity surges once more, limbs twisting unnaturally, psychic resonance rippling outward in a desperate bid to break free from Jin-Woo's control. The air itself vibrates with the force, sending dust and rubble scattering across the battlefield. Yet Jin-Woo's shadows move faster than thought, tendrils weaving and stretching with perfect autonomy, coiling around limbs, absorbing kinetic energy, redirecting strikes, and subtly manipulating instincts. Even as the creature attempts to twist and contort to find openings, its every movement is anticipated and neutralized. The abyssal beings, instinctively aggressive, attempt to flank, lunge, and overpower the awakened, yet they too are subtly restrained and guided into harmless collisions by shadows that move as extensions of Jin-Woo's consciousness. The battlefield is chaos, yet every element of it bends under his absolute control. Clare steps forward, yoki compressed into sharp, precise bursts, aura blazing silver, ready to assist if needed, yet fully aware that the Shadow Monarch's control surpasses even her combined power. She observes the mass of abyssal and awakened entities, noticing how every instinctive attack is catalogued, every attempt to overwhelm neutralized, and every surge of psychic energy absorbed without visible effort. Even the most massive rift-born awakened is forced into positions of vulnerability, redirected with surgical precision by shadows that are simultaneously offensive, defensive, and controlling. The organization's elite Claymores, blades flashing in desperation, struggle to comprehend the scale of dominance before them. Tactics, strategy, coordination. They all seem meaningless in the face of a force capable of dictating instinct, energy, and terrain with flawless precision. The Curse of Awakening, sensing its usual dominance challenged for the first time, escalates its assault. Rifts tear open more violently, psychic screams reverberate, and new awakened forms pour forth with grotesque, impossible anatomy. Their instinct-driven attacks increase in speed and unpredictability, yet Jin-Woo remains calm, shadow tendrils weaving through the battlefield like sentient instruments, isolating strikes, restraining limbs, and redirecting momentum while maintaining the perfect balance of control over multiple threats at once. Even when multiple entities converge simultaneously, his shadows adapt instantaneously, bending space and energy to maintain dominance. The organization's elite Claymores cannot react fast enough, yoki flaring in desperation as they are forced onto the defensive, witnessing a predator who defines the rules of engagement entirely on his own terms. A colossal wave of awakened and abyssal creatures charges together, the combined force shaking the fractured village. The lead Claymore signals a desperate coordinated attack, but Jin-Woo's tendrils respond with unmatched precision, isolating threats, manipulating movement, and ensuring no direct harm reaches him or Clare. Kinetic energy is absorbed into the terrain, strikes collide harmlessly, and instinctive reactions are bent against their will. The battlefield is a symphony of controlled chaos, each entity reacting to the predator's manipulation rather than its own desires. The Curse of Awakening cannot overwhelm, cannot adapt fast enough, and even its most feral instinct is nullified by the sovereign presence at the center. Jin-Woo steps lightly across rubble-strewn ground, shadows expanding in all directions, coiling around limbs, redirecting attacks and subtly compressing energy fields. The abyssal beings attempt to adapt, flanking, twisting, and lurching with aggression, yet each movement is catalogued, countered, and guided harmlessly. The massive rift-born awakened attempts one final desperate lunge, psychic energy surging to destabilize the field entirely. Jin-Woo's shadows respond instantaneously, absorbing the energy, redirecting the momentum, and restraining the creature in mid-motion without lethal force. Smaller awakened and abyssal creatures collide into tendrils, instinctively flailing yet rendered ineffective. Clare watches, aura blazing as she realizes even her combined efforts are enhanced, but ultimately secondary to the predator's absolute control. The organization's elite Claymores, seeing the futility of direct engagement, begin to adjust defensively, trying to survive while Jin-Woo continues to manipulate the battlefield. Tendrils wrap around multiple threats simultaneously, guiding them into positions of restraint, isolating their instincts, and redirecting their kinetic energy harmlessly into the environment. The Curse of Awakening pulses violently, yet the force it seeks to dominate is untouchable, sovereign, and beyond comprehension. The Shadow Monarch moves with calm authority, controlling the chaos, maintaining dominance, and ensuring that every attack, every instinct, and every surge of energy aligns under his will. The massive awakened entity, exhausted from repeated redirection and restraint, finally collapses, limbs bent at impossible angles, restrained completely by the shadows. Smaller abyssal and awakened forms, slow instinctive aggression blunted, confusion flickering in their unnatural eyes. The battlefield, though scarred and chaotic, has come under full control. Clare exhales sharply, silver aura fading slightly, aware that survival and dominance alike were maintained entirely by Jin-Woo's calculated sovereignty. The organization's elite warriors, though relieved, realize the profound truth. They have witnessed a predator who redefines power, instinct, and control beyond any understanding of their world. Jin-Woo stands at the center, shadows pulsing like living extensions of his will, untouchable, sovereign, and the undisputed force governing every element of the chaotic battlefield. As the dust settles and the rifts of the curse of awakening close, Jin-Woo surveys the village calmly, shadows retracting but still subtly alive beneath his feet, a silent reminder of his absolute dominance. The abyssal beings retreat into shadowed fissures, their instincts suppressed and confused, and the awakened are contained, restrained by a force they cannot comprehend. Clare steps forward, nodding subtly in acknowledgement, Yoki stabilizing, and the organization's elite exchange glances of astonishment and relief. The battlefield bears the scars of conflict, yet the predator at its center remains perfectly composed, untouchable, and entirely sovereign over friend, foe, and nightmare alike. With that, the Shadow Monarch has demonstrated unparalleled mastery over instinct, energy, and chaos itself, reshaping the very rules of combat within the Claymore universe. His control is absolute, his dominance unquestioned, and the forces of the abyssal, awakened, and human alike have learned that even the fiercest instinct can be rendered irrelevant under the sovereignty of Sung Jin-Woo. Thank you for joining us on this journey into a world where power, instinct, and sovereignty collide. If you enjoyed seeing Sung Jin-Woo dominate the Claymore universe, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon to catch every epic crossover adventure right here on LoreCity. Drop your thoughts in the comments. What universe should Jin-Woo enter next? And who would stand a chance against the Shadow Monarch? Your ideas might inspire our next episode. Until next time, stay tuned, because in the multiverse anything is possible.